Her motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. This is a final amendment to the bill and will not kill it or send it back to committee. I oppose H.R. 1911. While it's bad enough that student loan interest rates are set to double on July 1st, this bill actually makes interest loan rates even worse for our students. By allowing interest rates to rise dramatically on their loans, this bill steals from students and forces them to pay for Congress's debt. That's absolutely unacceptable. The higher interest rates in this bill will force graduates who are just beginning to plan their lives. It will force them to pay an estimated added $1,200 each year to the government over 5 years. That's in addition to what they're already expecting to pay. And not only that, the interest rate is not guaranteed, so they can't even plan for this bad news. When you buy a car, you know what your interest rate will be for the life of the loan. Future graduates who are starting a family, looking for work, and hoping to contribute to our communities, these graduates should at least have the same reassurance about their investment in their hard work as they would have when buying a car. It is Congress's duty to stop student loan interest rates from increasing by July 1st, and it is outrageous that we would force students to pay for the debt that Congress has created. Hard-working students shouldn't have to pay for Congress's mistakes. 2 weeks ago, I shared the story of one of my students at Arizona State University, Ariel Carlos. Ariel and his wife, May, worked their way through college to pay for school and put food on the table for their kids. Ariel also took out student loans in order to make it. Ariel has debt that he and his wife will pay for decades to come. Students of mine, like Ariel, will make about $30,000 a year when entering the workforce. They can't afford to pay down Congress's debt in addition to taking care of their families. When Ariel asks me to tell Congress not to make matters worse for families like his, and then Congress responds with this so-called solution, we have failed him and his family. My motion to recommit would help students. My amendment includes a truth in lending requirement that stops teaser rates. Teaser rates start low but then skyrocket without warning and cost thousands of dollars more for students in the future. This amendment also requires the government to tell students the true cost of their loans, including the amount of their interest payments. This amendment allows students to plan for their future. Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from California, Representative George Miller.
I want to congratulate the gentlewoman for offering this motion to recommit. I think she goes right to the heart of the matter, and that is the uncertainty that is being presented by the legislation on the floor today. Other members tried to deal with this issue of uncertainty. Mr. Heck from Nevada tried to deal with this uncertainty by providing an incentive for those students who borrow money and were able to pay 4 years on steady payments to give them incentive to continue to do that. Mr. Rice of South Carolina sought to have a lower rate. This lower rate isn't chiseled in granite. This isn't the market rate. This is a choice of the Republican members of the committee to choose these rates. Mr. Rice thought, in this time, couldn't we have the lower rate begin? But the Rules Committee turned that out. President Obama's plan was offered, and they turned that out. So now we're stuck, and that's why we need this motion to recommit, to do as the gentlewoman from Arizona has said, to protect the students from the escalation of their interest rates, to protect the students from the escalation of the cost of college. These are families and students. Companies and colleges create calculators to try to show students what it will cost over 4 years. This legislation takes all of that certainty out for families, how they set money aside, how they save money, how they borrow money. Those calculators don't work with this variable rate. And this variable rate can go on and on and on and on. And that's the problem here. This is a big choice for most families. I appreciate for some families, it's not a deal. They got enough money. For where I live, my family, people around me, my neighbors, this is a big choice to make a commitment to finance the education of your children. And that's why this motion to recommit from the gentlewoman from Arizona is so important, to have truth in lending for America's students, truth in lending for America's families, and to get rid of the rates that will just punish them and crush them into the future as they graduate from college and they seek to participate in the American economy and a career of their choice and the talents that we need as a nation. I want to thank the gentlewoman so very much.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Minnesota, still maintains point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to withdraw my point of order.
Gentleman withdraws his point of order.
And I rise in opposition to the motion.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're trying to get to a long-term solution on how student loan interest rates are set. I believe the process for that is to pass the underlying legislation here, talk to our Senate colleagues, get them to act so that we can come together and come to a long-term solution. The gentlelady's motion puts Washington squarely back in the middle of setting student loan interest rates. It's the wrong thing to do. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the motion and vote yes on the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back without objection. The previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Noes have it. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, I request the ayes and nays.
The ayes and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the ayes and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the ayes and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by a 5-minute vote on passage of the bill if ordered and approval of the journal if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote.
The pending business in the House is a procedural vote related to student loan rate legislation. The bill itself would prevent federal student loan interest rates from doubling this July 1st as scheduled. If you're a student or the parent of a college student, you know that those rates are set to go from 3.4 to 6.8% on July 1st. And to help keep rates in check, this bill would also tie student loan rates to activity in the financial markets. 3 votes in this series, including a 15-minute vote on the previous question and a possible final passage vote, followed by a vote on the record of the previous day's activities in the House. As the House votes, remarks from House Speaker John Boehner. Earlier today, he held his last weekly briefing of the month as the House begins its week-long recess tomorrow for the Memorial Day holiday.
Good morning, everyone. Jobs continue to be our #1 priority here in the Congress. The President's policies are undermining economic growth. 4 years of slow job growth is frankly just unacceptable. I think we can do a whole lot better. This week, House is taking action on 2 parts of our jobs plan, expanding American energy and improving the Keystone Pipeline, and secondly, strengthening our student loan system for students and their families. We're working to build a stronger, healthier economy for all Americans, even as we work to hold this administration accountable. Well, today is a new day, which means that we're sure to get a new story from the White House on the IRS scandal. First, they told us that the White House learned from the news that the IRS was targeting conservative groups. But then we hear the President's lawyer knew a report was coming. But they said that she didn't know the details. Of course, we came to find out that wasn't true either. Then we learned it wasn't just the President's lawyer. It was a number of his closest advisors as well. And, of course, despite first claiming to be blindsided by all of it, we now know that his deputy chief of staff was even involved in the planning of the announcement. Drip, drip, drip. Every day there's something new. We don't know how deep this extends within the administration, and that's why our committees are going to continue to investigate this. But what is most troubling in this White House is that the lights are on, but there doesn't seem to be anybody at home. The IRS systematically violated the rights of Americans for almost 2 years. The Treasury Department knew about this last year. The White House was made aware of it last month. Yet no one thought that they should tell the President. Fairly inconceivable to me. We are going to continue to seek answers until we get to the truth. The administration hasn't been upfront with the American people about Benghazi. They're suggesting the reporters were criminals for doing their jobs, and we can't get a straight answer from them on the IRS. What we're seeing from this administration is an arrogance of power. And when Americans can't count on some semblance of truth and honesty from their government, we've got a big problem.
The House Ways and Means Committee sent a letter to the IRS demanding all communication between the IRS and the White House on this Tea Party scandal. They didn't comply by the deadline. Should the House subpoena these documents to find out the communication between the White House and IRS?
I think we'll let the Ways and Means Committee, they're doing a good job on this investigation. Dave Camp's a very capable guy. I'll let them make that decision.
Speaker Boehner, you were asked earlier this week about the question of offsets, and there was sort of kerfuffle earlier in the year about the Sandy aid. To what extent?
Really?
To what extent do you think that the issue of disaster aid has been politicized by Democrats wanting to use as Christmas trees, and your members on your side wanting to show their fiscal machismo by demanding offsets?
You know, I think members on both sides of the aisle understand that that we have programs in place to help people in the event of a disaster. And I think members on both sides of the aisle want these programs to be administered in a responsible and fair way. In addition to that, Washington has a spending problem. You know, for 55 of the last 60 years, we've spent more money than what we've brought in. That's why we've got a nearly $17 trillion national debt. And so we certainly have members who believe that spending is spending, even though it may be a very good purpose. And so between these two groups of members, and frankly I would say it's a bipartisan group on each side, the Congress has to act. And so that debate will continue. It's a healthy debate, and frankly ought to continue. Jonathan.
On the student loan issue, the Senate has a different approach, the President has a different approach, and they are going to make the House approach look like a way to raise student loan rates. How can you win this fight before July 1st, or ultimately are you being backed again into a political corner?
Listen, I think what the House is doing today is a responsible way to deal honestly with the issue of student loans. Can somebody politicize this on the other side of the aisle? Certainly they can. But mistakes were made several years ago when the Democrats had complete control of the Congress and the White House, and they got caught by the Congressional Budget Office at the last minute and put us in this box. And so a year ago, you know, basically we just extended the program for a year. But at some point it has to be fixed. And we've outlined what we think is a responsible fix for the program to prevent student loans from doubling. I think it's responsible. Senate, when they act, we can go to conference and resolve the differences.
Last time you said you wanted somebody to go to jail over this IRS. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but...
I'm not either, so we're in the same boat.
Okay, we're in the same boat. If you keep bringing up here people like Lois Lerner who say I'm not going to answer any questions to incriminate myself, don't you run the risk of defeating your whole purpose? What about immunity? I mean, there's got to be some question here where you can get the people up here to answer the questions that you need if you want to send them to jail.
Well, there are a number of ways I can answer this question, but let me point out that the Ways and Means Committee is conducting an investigation and hearings, as well as the Government Reform and Oversight Committee. I have full confidence in their ability to get to the truth. In addition to that, the Justice Department, the FBI, is conducting a criminal investigation. And the Inspector General at the IRS, who did the audit, remember, an audit's just a sampling of information, is in the process of doing a complete investigation. So there will be ample opportunities for us to get to the truth and to figure out who violated the law.
Mr. Speaker, every week we hear about a new incident of sexual assault in the military, including something that happened allegedly at West Point. What is the role of Congress in looking to stem this problem?
Well, I want to applaud Buck McKeon, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, who will address this in the Defense Authorization Bill. I also want to applaud the work of Congressman Mike Turner, who has been on the Department of Defense now for over 2 years to get to the bottom of this. It's outrageous, and frankly, it's a national disgrace.
This immigration group that you've encouraged looks like it's on the brink of collapsing.
Well, I've heard that before, too.
What's your read on it, and how much more difficult?
Listen, these are difficult issues, and there are a lot of difficult issues when you start talking about immigration reform. We've got a problem with legal immigration. We've got problems with illegal immigration, and they've been through an awful lot. But I've got to say, there are people on both sides of the aisle who've done their best to try to undermine their ability to get to an agreement. And you can go find out for yourself, because I think you'll figure it out.
Mr. Speaker, the overtime clock on the debt limit is now ticking. Where do things stand with your caucus in terms of coalescing around a strategy to approach this? And what's it going to take to go to conference? Some of your members of your party in the Senate are calling for this.
We had a conversation last week. We've had a couple of conversations, private conversations this week on how we might move ahead, but we've not made any decisions at this point.
Speaker Boehner, the Attorney General yesterday announced that in the past 4 years, 4 Americans have been killed by drone strikes overseas. President Obama is now announcing that program will go underneath DOD, over from CIA. What are your thoughts about 4 Americans being killed by drones over the last 4 years, and are you supportive of the measures he's taking with this program?
I think our committees will be looking at this. Clearly, after we were notified yesterday that 4 Americans were killed in these drone strikes, our committees will look to determine the appropriateness of that action. With regard, I'll wait and see what the President has to say about his revised drone policy when he says it.
Are you comfortable with it? Are you comfortable with Americans being killed overseas by drones?
I want to see the facts.
On immigration, as you know, the Senate is working on a bill that, among other things, would grant...
I like how you just jumped right out there in front of that young lady.
I thought you were pointing to me. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. Go ahead, John.
It would grant a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants. Can you see the House passing such a bill, and would you support such a bill yourself?
The House is going to work its will on immigration. We're not going to be stampeded by the White House or stampeded by the President. The Senate is working its will. A lot of good work that's going on over there. But the House will work its will. Don't ask me how, because if I knew, I'd certainly tell you. But the House is going to work its will, and I'm confident that we'll have a solid work product that we can go to conference with the Senate.
On immigration, why is it that you've been interested in pushing or supporting the Gang of 8 as opposed to doing a more peaceful approach? What would be worthwhile about having a more comprehensive bill?
I've been supportive of efforts beyond the Gang of 8 or the Group of 8 in the House. I think they've done good work. It's whether they actually finish and agree on everything or not, they've done a lot of really good work. But I've also been very encouraged by the work of our chairman, Bob Goodlatte, Judiciary Committee. They've had a lot of very good hearings, got a lot of very good ideas. Homeland Security Committee moved a border security bill out of their committee on a voice vote. So there are a lot of efforts that I've encouraged because if we're going to solve this problem, we've got to educate our members. And we've got to help educate them about the hundreds of issues that are involved if we're truly going to have immigration reform. Have a nice Memorial Day weekend.
Were you playing golf this weekend?
Oh.
Speaker Boehner, just a short time ago, and we'll have remarks from Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi in just a few moments. House members voting now on a motion to recommit, attempting to make changes to the bill on the floor. The amendment would in part protect students and parents from teaser initial low interest rates on student loans and request full disclosure of rates and rate increases from year to year, among other items. This is all part of the House's debate today over a scheduled doubling of student loan rates, scheduled to take place on July 1st. We have been taking some of your tweets on the issue. From Daria: tell House GOP we won't let them increase student loans as high as 8.5%. Sign your name to stand with President Obama. Allison says instead of raising the rate on student loans, maybe cut back on your benefits. And from Sanda Fluck: glad to see President Obama will veto House Republican plan to raise interest rates on student loans. And we are taking your tweets at the hashtag student loans. As this vote continues in the House, remarks now from House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi during her weekly briefing earlier today.
Just the thing about these votes, they all seem to come around the time that we're supposed to be meeting, so we'll have to use our time husband our time very economically here because the room has to move on. Really, it is so sad to even think about what happened in Oklahoma. Our hearts remained very much with the people of Moore, Oklahoma, and all that were caught in the path of this week's deadly and devastating tornado. For those of us who don't live in tornado country, it's really hard to understand the impact. But we live in earthquake country, some of us, and just any one of these interventions into the lives of people, loss of life, loss of sense of community in certain respects, but it seems to be a very strong community, and the character of it is what is, that strength of character is what is carrying it through. Nonetheless, no words can comfort those who lost a family member or a loved one. The small children lost is just heartbreaking. I spoke on the floor yesterday about having visited an earthquake site in Italy years ago where the 7th grade class was in church rehearsing for Holy Communion, and in the earthquake the roof came down on the class. It meant that every 7th grader in that village was gone. Imagine the devastation that causes, and losing these children, at least 7 of them in the school, 7 in the school and then 3 otherwise. Such a sad thing. Of course, we'll work with our colleagues from Oklahoma to make sure that they get the assistance they need. President Obama has already deployed the head of FEMA to the city and will travel to the region himself this weekend, as you know. And as we witness the aftermath of the tornado, we commend the teachers who, they're always there for the students, who protected their students from harm, and the first responders who immediately ran to the wreckage to search for survivors, rescue their neighbors, and begin the work of recovery. And they had some level of success, thank God. For those heroes, for all the people of Oklahoma, we will stand. I hope it's a comfort to them that so many people share their grief, mourn their losses, and stand by them to help them recover and to rebuild. On Monday, Americans will gather to mark Memorial Day, to remember the men and women in uniform who have lost, that we have lost in battle, and to honor the service and sacrifice of our service members in every generation. And really for the history of our country. Yesterday, Democratic members of the Veterans Affairs Committee rolled out a package to ensure timely access to benefits and to veterans and their families. I was very proud of the work of Congressman Mike Michaud, our ranking member on the committee, as well as other members of the committee who had introduced legislation which I hope will be moving forward in a bipartisan way. The backlog of claims to our veterans is a challenge to the conscience of our country. How can this be? Our legislation will promote innovation, speed up the claims process, empower the VA to reduce and eliminate the backlog, and really pay, when a claim is long overdue, pay up front what it is, and then work it out later. It's money that we're going to have to pay anyway. We might as well allow our vets to pay the rent and their other responsibilities. Secretary Shinseki has taken steps already to end the backlogs, and Secretary Hagel yesterday, I think, testified very directly that he has directed the Pentagon to find ways to better integrate military health records with the VA, and that's one of the problems, is the compatibility, the interoperability of one technology with another, but more must be done. We know that with Memorial Day drawing near. We will all of us, from right to left, Democrats, Republicans, all Americans, reaffirming our basic promise to the military, to our men and women in uniform, our veterans. And that promise is that in the military they say, on the battlefield, we leave no soldier behind, and when they come home, we leave no veteran behind. As we prepare to start another recess, the clock is continuing to tick. The Republican leadership still prefers to do nothing on jobs or the budget. The legislative branch, the first article of the Constitution, the responsibility to legislate, and we just are not getting the job done. 141 days since the start of this Congress, no jobs bill. 61 days since the Senate passed a budget, no conference. What is Republicans ask for regular order. That's music to our ears. What does that mean? It means open, transparent discussion at the table between the House bill and the Senate bill as to what differences we can reconcile. They ask for regular order. They don't take yes for an answer, again, over 61 days ago. We've even seen, we're not the only ones, House and Senate Democrats and the President, calling for going to the table in a transparent and open way. In recent days, as you know, Senator McCain and Senator Collins have demanded Republicans answer their own call for regular order by going to conference and bringing both budgets to the table. Instead of working to enact a budget or to create jobs, today the House Republicans will vote on the Make College More Expensive Act. This is really stunning. I hope you pay attention to the debate and with the charts and the rest to clearly demonstrate how damaging this is to college affordability, to those who want to go to college, to their families who want to help them to do so. This will be worse. You know, we've talked about trying to keep it at 3.4%. It will double at 6.8. We want to stop that from happening. The Republican remedy to that is to go beyond 6.8, a market rate, so to speak, without a reasonable cap. And so it's just wrong. They try to masquerade it as looking like the President's proposal, which it is not. So please pay attention to the debate today, because this is a kitchen table issue for the American people. Again, it's no time to waste. We must secure a budget that creates jobs, reduces the deficit, gets rid of sequestration, and takes us into the future. One of the areas that we are focusing on in a bipartisan way, and I'm very hopeful that we can achieve success in just a matter of weeks or months or before the August recess, is immigration, comprehensive immigration reform. We have to restore confidence in who we are as a people. By and large, we are a nation of immigrants. Every immigrant who comes to our country, every generation of immigrants who comes to our country with their hopes, their dreams, their determination, their optimism for the future makes America more American. It's an invigoration, it's an enrichment, and as soon as we can pass the bill, we can more fully avail ourselves, our country, all of us, including them, to proceeding into the future. In order to do this, though, and I want to be really clear about that because I hear some misrepresentations reported in the press. If you check with me, I'll tell you, but let me tell you all right here. We must, again, have comprehensive immigration reform. We must value the contribution of immigrants to our country. In doing so, we must protect our borders, we must protect our workers, and we must protect the taxpayer. And we have said since day one, we said it in the Affordable Care Act, and we'll say it here again, that undocumented people will not have access to subsidies in the Affordable Care Act. Any representation to the contrary is simply not true. It's stated very clearly in the Affordable Care Act. It is our position in the immigration bill. No access to subsidies in the Affordable Care Act. Secondly, no access to Medicaid. No cost to the taxpayer. And that has always been the Democratic position. So any thought that we want to do something different than that is simply not true. It is a bottom line, no need to even discuss it, no subsidies in Affordable Care Act, no Medicaid. That's it. And so, again, we're optimistic about the prospects. There's some differences of opinion as to what is an insurmountable obstacle, what might be a legitimate condition, and one, is that an insurmountable obstacle? Because at the end of the day, we don't want to place any doubt that if the bill passes and the conditions are met, that these people, so many people in our country will be on a path to legalization and eventually citizenship. I congratulate the Senate for passing their bill last night out of committee. Again, it's not everything we want, but it is taking us forward. And hopefully we can make improvements as we go along. And it is my view that it would be very helpful to have a bipartisanly supported House bill to go to the table to reconcile our differences. And before the summer...
The question is on the passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Gentleman from California.
Recorded vote.
Recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device.
So 2 more votes in the House. Right now, final passage of the student loan bill. The measure would prevent federal student loan rates from doubling this July 1st as scheduled. They're set to go from 3.4 to 6.8%. To help keep rates under control, this bill would also tie student loan rates to activity in the financial markets. After this, we could also see a vote on the Journal, and that would be a record of the previous day's activities in the House, and that would be a 5-minute vote. As the House votes, the Senate is right now debating the Farm Bill, which sets agriculture and food stamp programs for the next 5 years. At 1 o'clock, lawmakers are expected to take up the nomination of Sri Srinivasan to be a judge in the D.C. Court of Appeals. Votes in that nomination are expected at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can see the Senate on C-SPAN 2. And live coverage of the Senate Commerce Committee, as it is meeting this afternoon debating the nomination of billionaire businesswoman Penny Pritzker to be the next Commerce Secretary. We have live coverage of that hearing on our companion network, C-SPAN 3.
198. Bill is passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
And to speak out of order for 1 minute.
Suspend. Floor will come to order. Members will clear the well. Please take your seats or take your conversations off the floor. Again, the House will be in order. Will all members clear the well, take your seats, or take your conversations off the floor? Especially for those in the back of the chamber, please take your seats or your conversations off the floor. The House will be in order. Once again, take your conversations off the floor. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I know that members want to catch planes, and I will be brief. But I did want to take this opportunity. From time to time, we, in sadness, see one of those people who has served this institution very well and served me, both as in my role as Majority Leader and as Democratic Whip. But I wanted to rise at this point in time to say thank you. And I know you want to join with me. To Austin Burns, who is leaving as my floor director and as a valued friend and staff member. And at the same time, I want to thank those on Speaker Boehner's staff, on Majority Leader Cantor's staff, and on Whip McCarthy's staff, who have worked so well and positively with Austin Burns for helping us to do our job better. Obviously, there were differences from time to time, well, maybe all the time, but I thank you for that. And Austin, I want to thank you for the service you have given to this institution, to your country, to me, and to all the members who appreciate very much your advice and counsel. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. Pursuant to Clause 8, Rule 20, the unfinished business question of agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal, which the Chair will put de novo. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, and the Journal stands approved. Gentleman from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Without objection, so ordered. Gentleman from Minnesota.
I'd like unanimous consent to have my name removed as a co-sponsor on H.R. 1773.
H.R. 1773.
1773.
Without objection, so ordered.
The Chair lays before the House the following personal requests.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Clyburn of South Carolina for today, Mr. Culberson of Texas for today, Mr. Gibson of New York for today, and Mr. Lewis of Georgia for today.
Without objection, the requests are granted. Can we get some order now? The House will come to order. Members will take their conversations off the floor. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Consent to address the House for 1 minute and advise next step.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, during the 2013 State of the Union address, President Obama stated that every day we must ask ourselves, and I quote, how do we attract more jobs to our shore? And how do we make sure that the hard work leads to a decent living? End of quote. Well, this week the House considered and passed H.R. 3, the Northern Route Approval Act, legislation approving the Keystone XL pipeline. Despite estimates showing thousands of new jobs resulting from the project, the administration has delayed approval. Despite the Democrat-led Senate passing an amendment recommending its approval, the administration has delayed approval. Despite an environmental review process that has been more rigorous than similarly previously approved projects, the administration has delayed approval. Despite two-thirds of Americans favoring its approval, this administration has delayed approval. It's time for the President to move from asking the jobs question to answering it. He can do so by ending the bureaucratic delays blocking approval of Keystone XL and moving forward with this vital project that will bring thousands of high-paying jobs to America's shore. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute. House will be in order. Please take your conversations off the floor. Gentleman is recognized.
I thank the Speaker. I rise today as a member of the Safe Climate Caucus to say that we have now passed 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for the first time in human history, in fact, for the first time in several million years. This is indeed a milestone, but it should not be a breaking point. We have done damage to our climate through human activities. If we continue to fill our atmosphere with carbon and other greenhouse gases, then yes, we will begin to experience irreversible changes to the planet. Over the last century, we've demonstrated how human actions, especially unregulated consumption of fossil fuels, can harm our planet and upset human welfare, as we've seen with historic droughts, fires, floods, and superstorms more and more. Yesterday, the House again voted to approve the Keystone XL pipeline, a project that represents a long-term reliance on fossil energy and would commit us to a path toward irreversible global warming and climate change. The political decisions we make today will decide the future. We must reduce our dependence on conventional fuels and redirect our policies.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Memorial Day, we take time to honor all those who sacrificed so much to secure our nation's freedom, peace, and prosperity. This week, I came together with a bipartisan group of my freshman colleagues to lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington National Cemetery. We paid respect to our nation's fallen heroes, especially those known only to God. In my opinion, there is no more special place in our nation's capital than Arlington. When you enter the gates, all labels but American are shed. And no words are necessary, for the countless rows of white markers speak volumes. With the sometimes vigorous debate in this chamber, it is important to remember those who rest just 4 miles from here. There we find what holds our country together. The Book of Wisdom teaches that the souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and no torment shall touch them. They are at peace. What comfort indeed for our fallen heroes. I thank the Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, higher education has always been the pathway to economic prosperity in this country. In fact, the Georgetown University study, my alma mater, shows that a college graduate earns over $1 million more over a lifetime than a non-graduate. Yet, today our college students are graduating with debt to spare instead of job security. Now, that's why Barbara Malloy called my office. She's a single mom, an elementary school teacher. She's got her son James in a freshman year of college. And she is very, very worried that she's not going to be able to afford to keep her son in college because they're racking up tens and thousands of dollars in debt. And so, Mr. Speaker, that's why I oppose today's plan. I think we have to do better. We need to find a way to reduce the cost of college, not raise the cost of college. And I hope that we can, in a bipartisan way, do a better job. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, they are from every state and territory. They are of all races, both sexes. They are from farms, ranches, and cities. They are rich and poor, but generally they are young. They all, to a person, are volunteers, the all-American volunteers, volunteers to defend America. Some have gone off to war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Some have returned with the wounds of war, and some have returned with an American flag draped over their coffin. Here are 37 warriors from the 2nd Congressional District in Texas who died protecting us from the forces of evil in Afghanistan and Iraq. You see, they are very diverse. They are all races. They are young. They are old. They are from privates to colonels, enlisted to even West Point graduates. They are all from different branches of the service. So this Memorial Day, we remember them all, those who gave all, and we thank their families for giving America their sons and their daughters. For the worst casualty of war is to be forgotten, and that's just the way it is. I ask unanimous consent to submit into the record the 37 warriors killed in Afghanistan and Iraq from the 2nd Congressional District of Texas.
Without objection. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are few things Americans enjoy more than watching a Sunday football with their friends and family. But the excitement of football, the clashing of helmets, the tackles, can cause long-term health damage to our nation's athletes. Last May, Junior Seau, a former Miami Dolphin, one of the top linebackers in NFL history, sadly took his life after battling debilitating depression from repeated head trauma. Last season alone, we saw high-profile players sent back into the game immediately after suffering concussions. This is unfair to athletes, their families, and it is also unfair to taxpayers since they pick up the cost when these athletes can no longer afford the cost of their injuries. The NFL has the power to ensure that the American pastime, this American pastime, becomes safer. Thank you very much.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to congratulate Patrick Henry College's National Moot Court team on their 5th consecutive national championship this year. The team boasts two-time national champions, as well as a national orator champion who holds the record for the most points earned in the history of the league. Patrick Henry College, or PHC, has now won a total of 7 national moot court championships and has built a strong reputation for success nationwide. I thank the team coaches, Dr. Michael Ferris, founder of PHC, and Dr. Frank Galusa for their leadership and investment in these young leaders. In a time when we're asking the government to get out of the way, PHC serves as a shining example of what can be achieved when freed from the binds of government purse strings. From day one, the college has not accepted federal funding. I congratulate Patrick Henry College and its talented young people for the example it has and will continue to set for higher education in America. I also thank Congressman Frank Wolf for graciously giving me the opportunity to make these remarks. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas seek recognition? Without objection. The lady is recognized.
Speaker, as we leave here today, many of us will anxiously return to our constituency to be able to celebrate and pay tribute to soldiers, those who have fallen, and of course, those who are now veterans. As I look out and will look out into the vast audience at the Houston Veterans Cemetery, I can tell you that I'll see an array of America, families who have come to say thank you to the fallen. But those who have no relatives at that particular site are just being Americans. And as we as members of Congress ascend to the podium to say thank you and to talk about the work we have done, the beautiful sunshine will shine on those faces, and we'll feel that America is a country that really understands the love and affection for our soldiers and those who are on battlefields. I want to thank the city of Jacinto City, who will be placing flags to honor our soldiers. And I want to thank the community of the Heights, where I will go later and place flags at the World War II Memorial and draw the community together. It is a day when we bond together as Americans because we are not of any party, of any region, of any political persuasion. We're simply Americans saying thank you to the soldiers. God bless you to America. For those who have fallen, we'll never, never forget you and never do it any day of our lives. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the heroic efforts of Deputy Chris Jones of the Jersey County, Illinois Sheriff's Department. On April 23rd, Deputy Jones pulled a 67-year-old woman from a car that was being swallowed by floodwater. At 8:42 in the evening, Deputy Jones received a call to alert him of a driver in distress on State Highway 100. And when he arrived on the scene, he tried to make verbal contact with her, but her car was submerged in water that covered the hood and part of the trunk, and she was unable to respond. He proceeded to enter the water, where he found the driver still conscious, and he assisted her from the vehicle. He later learned that the woman had been trapped for around 40 minutes. Because of his valiant efforts in service to Jersey County, I am proud to honor the actions that Deputy Chris Jones took on April 23rd of this year. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the IRS has broken faith with the American people. The agency responsible for administering our tax code has admitted targeting Americans for their political beliefs. American families across the country are disappointed and fearful. They are disappointed that the administration that promised hope and change has used its enforcement power as a political weapon. They are fearful of a government that has expanded under President Obama at an alarming rate. They are disappointed that our President has not taken responsibility for his administration's shameful behavior. They are fearful of corruption that is the logical result of a rapidly expanding bureaucracy and an administration that confuses playing politics with leadership. Hard-working families deserve better. Federal agencies have a responsibility to be above politics, and we have a responsibility to hard-working American families to hold accountable those who politicize decision-making and those who are untruthful about those decisions. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Firings and jail time are in order. On Friday, May the 10th, the IRS admitted to targeted scrutiny of conservative groups and their applications for tax-exempt status. Hundreds of groups have been targeted and went beyond those with just Tea Party or Patriot in their names. Since